Come on, y'all. We gotta tap the screen and get some people up here. Tap the screen and share the live. We don't even got 500 likes, y'all. Tap the screen. We gotta get some people up here. I'm waiting for this dude, Mob. Mob said he was joining. I said I could co-host with him. He'll be here for... He only said he could be here for like 15 minutes. But
because I want to talk to him.
He hasn't even joined. Yeah, I just got started a couple minutes ago, so... Yesterday's live was funny. That's definitely like good content. You heard this? Never mind. Yo, we need to get some people up here.
You know what that guy 11 does? He says that abortion, being pro-choice, is irrational. So I asked him, "What is irrational? How are you understanding irrational?" You know, and of course it isn't. There's some contradiction in holding that view, right? It's what he's using irrational to mean is there's no argument for it. Now, of course, on my view, there isn't really an argument because it's irreducible, right? But I asked him whether he thought that any value that could be held...
I'm interested. Do you have like an argument for particularism or...
Yeah, but it's kind of complicated.
Does it like have to do with the Bill Grommy stuff?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear about that, low-key.
Well, I can talk to you about it, but I mean, I think the simpler... There's sort... Oh, is somebody here?
Rush.
Oh, that's Ann. Is that our Ann?
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Why is she talking through a voice change?
Well, I'm just a bit smoked a bit sore today. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's Mob.
No.
Oh, Mob. So I wanted to see... I wanted to talk to you about this thing that you brought up, which was like the wish or the hope thing.
Oh, what? I don't remember that.
Well, because I was explaining to you that that for God to...
If you... Okay, yeah, I'm talking... Oh, yeah. There's like a special, like... let's say there's a cake. A special cake that can only pop into existence uncaused. And would it make sense to say you desire that cake? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, right. So the idea is, look, if he desires to be out of control, right, then it seems to me that entails moral indifference, right, to what happens. See what I'm saying? That entails moral indifference. So the point is, right, if I weren't morally indifferent to X obtaining, right, I would be compelled to act to prevent X obtaining, all else equal, right? So if I desire to be out of control as to whether X obtains or not, that entails that I'm morally indifferent to X obtaining. You see what I'm getting at?
So, I'm confused on where you're getting the desire to be out of control from. Like,
because the point is, I'm saying I want it to be the case that like a random number generator determines whether X obtains or not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So that just means I don't want to be in control of whether X obtains or not. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to be out of control about this possibility. I'm just going to stand there with my arms folded, right? Put things into motion and then see what comes out. See what happens, right?
Thanks for the hallway.
Well, that's got to mean that I'm actually morally indifferent to whether X obtains or not.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Okay.
So let me try to change it. Let's say like necessarily this cake can only pop into existence uncaused. Like you can't. It's not possible for you to make this cake. You know what I mean? The only way it can come into existence is if it just like randomly pops into existence. So it's not like you're choosing to have it come random. That's the only possibility. But you really want the cake.
Well, okay, just before you go on, I mean, I can grant you all that for the sake of argument, but you realize you're revising omnipotence there.
Why? Okay. Why?
Well, because there's no logical impossibility in the cake coming about some other way. Unless you're just sort of building into your definition of what the cake is that it's randomly produced, right?
Oh, I think I get what you're saying. So you're like, okay, if God wants people to have leeway freedom, then he's indifferent really to what
Yes! That's it. That's what I'm saying. That's why the free will defense doesn't work. I mean, I can attack the free will defense in other ways, right? Like, have I talked to you about...
What's going on in AY server?
What's going on in there?
I don't know. There's like a huge VC with a bunch of people.
Why don't you go in and see what it is?
Yeah, there's nothing to it right now.
Like God doesn't have morally significant freedom on that view. And, there's all these issues with it. But the thing is, the most fundamental issue is it really doesn't address, right, what it means to say that God doesn't want the agent to not do the thing that he's commanded them not to do, right? Because what does it mean to say that he's opposed to them doing that, right, if he takes no action to prevent it from obtaining in any possible world, right?
Yeah. I think pancaking says something like, if it's logically possible, if it's logically possible for God to value the leeway freedom, then there's
I'm not ruling out that he can value leeway freedom. I can grant that for the sake of argument, right? My point is that if he values it, it entails that he's morally indifferent to the agent choosing the so-called evil thing.
Yeah, or he's morally indifferent to whether the evil thing happens.
Obtains. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. They could say, well, it's not what the outcome is that is evil. It's simply the choice, right? They could say, because maybe God prevents. Maybe the choice is he can choose to push a button that is going to give an old lady or give a child a lollipop, or he could push the button that he thinks will blow up the world. And maybe it turns out that if he pushes the second button, God actually prevents the evil outcome from obtaining, right? The world doesn't blow up. But nonetheless, God might want to say it's bad that he chose it, right? You could have the view that there's something morally wrong, right? I mean, all this libertarian free will stuff is just like bullshit. But let's just pretend that it makes
talking
sense.
To a theist right now.
Really, who is it?
Wait, where?
Properly basic. I have
in
no
his
clue.
server.
It's in study archives.
Oh, it's study archives.
Obvious.
That's Avi's server.
Can you invite me back? I'm banned though. But I think
Why are you banned?
Well.
Argument.
I'm not fucking ridiculous. Those two.
Yeah, but look, if God isn't that just like crush the problem? If God has knowledge of what you do in a counterfactual situation, then you're not libertarian free,
Go to
right?
Jay
No, no.
Dyer on
Well,
YouTube,
but
bro. Look at this clown.
look, no, actually, well, in a counterfactual, yes, but let's just leave aside the counterfactual stuff for a minute. Let's just say that God can see that you're going to do B.
Bro, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. I just gotta. My girlfriend called me. Sorry. Give me a minute.
No, that's fine.
We're gonna need to restart the live though after this
That's
conversation
fine.
or whatever.
Well, you can restart it before if you want. I mean, I can finish this after you restart it.
To finish this conversation.
All right.
Well, I know Mob has limited time.
Oh,
I don't
he's
know
got
if he
limited
wants me to
time.
restart
Okay.
now.
Okay. We'll wait till he gets off the phone.
I still don't know what they're talking about. They mentioned some
Properly
evolution
basic.
stuff.
Yeah, that's that's planting a type stuff.
Okay, I gotta go in a minute.
All right. Yeah, so let's say God knows that you're going to do B, right? But he wants you to be libertarian free to do either A or B, right? Now, B has no bad effects because God will prevent the bad effects from taking place. But he thinks it's morally undesirable for you to choose to do B, right? Just to even make the choice, right? He thinks is bad. What I'm saying is if he won't prevent you from taking the choice, I'm sorry, it won't prevent you from making the choice, right? What does it mean to say that he thinks it's undesirable?
Yeah.
So what does it mean to say in any random? Like I think it's. Let's say I had an indeterministic coin, an indeterministic fair coin, and I said I'm going to flip it, right? But I don't want it to come out tails, right? That's what I'm calling a wish or a hope, right? But it's not a moral desire. A moral desire is something that, in some possible world, would rationalize an action in accord with it. Rationalize an action that accords with it, right? That rationalizes an action to fulfill it or actualize it, right? So that's actually something I'm morally indifferent to. If I really thought it was bad for it to come up tails, like if that was really bad, right? I would just prevent that from happening, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's why none of the free will defense stuff works.
Yeah, that's some really interesting. Is there like a paper on this or something? Like, where are you getting
Well, Philip tells me that this is basically Mackey's argument, and the only thing that he's really added to it is some stuff about counterfactuals. So if you go back to Mackey and read it carefully, this is basically what Mackey is saying. And there's two basic places where Mackey talks about it. There's a paper called Evil and Omnipotence, and there's a chapter on problem of evil in his book, The Miracle of Theism. I think those are the two main places that he talks about it.
Yeah. I read Evil and Omnipotence. I read it in college for a philosophy class. This is what I remember Mackey saying. I remember him saying, basically, that we don't. Okay, like this is what I remember. We choose things based off of like our will, right? Mm-hmm. Our desires, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But we don't choose our own desires and our will towards certain things. So God can just change that.
Yes.
That wouldn't violate our free will.
Yeah.
You know? That's what I remember.
Yeah, but we don't even have to go into that. That is a way of attacking the free will defense, right? But my point is there's something more fundamental, which is simply that the proponent of the free will defense wants to say that by God's lights, it's evil for you to do B, libertarian leeway freely, right? But if by God's lights it's evil, what action does that potentially rationalize on God's part to oppose it? Because a good person opposes evil things, all else equal. If in no possible world he acts to oppose it. What does it mean to say he thinks it's evil and therefore undesirable?
Yeah.
Or morally undesirable, at least, right?
What was the second Mackey paper you said?
Oh, there's a book called The Miracle of Theism, and there's a chapter on the problem of evil in there.
Okay, I'll try to find that.
I mean, I haven't had a chance to reread those, since sort of understanding this dialectic, which was just sort of like explained to me by Philip and Josh, but that's what Philip says, that it's basically all there except for the stuff about counterfactuals. I don't know if that's true. Maybe Philip is misdescribing it. So you might be disappointed, but because I haven't had a chance to confirm what he's saying. But that's what he told me.
Well, what do you think? Oh, wait, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What do you think about the randomness objection to libertarian free will? That's usually
I accept that. But again, that's just another thing. I don't have to go there, right? I can just say, I can just grant you libertarian free will, grant you that it's coherent, intelligible, all this stuff, right? It still doesn't address the basic objection.
Zach's in here. Bro, I was laughing when this person said lick my clip, bro.
All right, let me read you to the argument, and then I gotta go. But I wonder what monkey Jason. Exactly. Hold on.
I gotta restart the live so we can actually get some people to debate. You said you only have 20 minutes, or are you still able to?
I gotta go like now. My girlfriend's waiting, but let me just read this.
Damn. All right.
I'll be like 2 minutes. Okay, P1. It is logically possible for God to value free will as a greater good. P2. It is logically possible that the type of free will God values entails the possibility of rejecting him as he would value freely loving him. Okay. P3. Plantinga's defense of Trans-World Depravity argues that this type of free will could be responsible for evil in the actual world without contradicting God's nature. P4. If Plantinga's defense is logically possible, there is no logical problem of evil. I know you'd reject that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the metaphysical necessity stuff doesn't actually make sense either. I don't know. I don't know. Did I talk about that with you? Because I was talking to Mason and MonkeyBoy and Davey about it.
Yeah.
About metaphysical possibility?
Obviously I don't believe in that. I don't think that makes any sense. But the point is, even if I granted that there was metaphysical necessity, it can't be the case that it's metaphysically necessary that a person sins. Because if you had a libertarian, if you had a leeway view of libertarian free will, right, that can't be metaphysically necessary. And I can show you why.
Wait, hold on. I think the claim is not that it's metaphysically necessary that a person sins. I think it's that it's metaphysically necessary that at least one person sins.
Yeah, but even that can't be metaphysically necessary. It's not the kind of thing that can be metaphysically necessary.
Okay, I'm interested.
Well, look, if I flip a coin, right, 10 times, let's just take a claim like it's metaphysically necessary, right, that, and by the way, this objection, I can still grant that it can be metaphysically necessary and block the free will defense, right? I'm just pointing out another problem with the free will defense, before getting to the more fundamental objection, right? Let's say that I say it's metaphysically necessary that an indeterministic fair coin come up heads, right? And I flip it in 10 out of 10 flips, and I flip it 9 times and it comes up tails, right? Well, if it's necessary that the next flip is that it's heads, that just means that it wasn't an indeterministic. It isn't an indeterministic event. Because an indeterministic event is a contingent one, not a necessary one.
Okay.
So that
Okay,
part of it is
let's,
just confused, right?
let's kind of explain. Let's say there's only two people
Yeah.
Cow boo.
in one world. There's three possible worlds. Then in one world they both sin. In world two, only one of them sins, but the other one doesn't. Then in world three, the other one sins, but the first one doesn't.
That doesn't make sense.
And then you'd say, so yeah. So how would your? I'm just trying to understand. The coin thing. How would it apply to like that? Because Plantinga's saying something like that.
Look, the point is that if to say that an event is a libertarian free, leeway free event is just to say that it's a brutally contingent event, right? And that means that there's a possible world with respect to that choice where A obtains, right?
Right.
If B is the alternative, right? So if you do B, that just means there's a possible world where you do A. And so if there's a possible world where an agent does, where two agents do B, right, there's going to be a possible world where two agents do A. Right?
Oh, okay. Wait. Let me try to steelman this. If it is truly brute, then it can't be possible for it to not happen, because that would mean something is causing it to not happen.
Yes.
And it's not brute anymore.
That's right.
True.
So that part of it is nonsense. Okay, but let's just grant per impossibile. It makes sense to say that it's metaphysically necessary that some agent, is trans-world depraved, or that in every possible world some agent sins, right? Well, that just means that God, if he's truly opposed to that happening, that means that in some possible world he would act, right, to prevent that from obtaining. But if in every possible world he values libertarian free will more than them doing that, that means there's no possible world where he acts to prevent that from obtaining. And if there's no possible world where he acts to prevent that from obtaining, that just means that he's morally indifferent to it obtaining. It doesn't make sense to say that he thinks it's evil or undesirable.
Bro, Zach, what is this person
sense?
saying, bro?
Yeah, that also Monkey, who you talking? Oh.
No, an AY server, this person in the chat.
So I can even grant them that trans-world depravity, all the stuff about it being metaphysically necessary, that all agents are trans-world depraved, or whatever the claim is. I can grant all that, right? Even though it's incoherent. Because even if it were, that would show that if God let that thing rather than chose not to create at all, he was morally indifferent to them acting that way.
Yeah. Okay, I understand this a lot more now.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But
So
I gotta go now.
okay, we can pick it up next time.
I see it.
Yeah. By the way, Jack,
Yeah.
how would you respond if a theist used the defeat condition as a response to the problem of evil? Basically, there's like greater goods arising out of every instance of evil that obtains in reality, or there's like a morally sufficient reason to let it obtain.
Yeah, so what I would say is that the way that I understand a morally sufficient reason to let an evil obtain is to say that it's a contingent fact that some evil is connected to some good, right? So like the idea would be something like take for example the idea that I have a morally sufficient reason to administer a vaccine to prevent some child from contracting a disease, even though I shouldn't cause pain to a child, all else equal. The vaccine is administered through a painful shot, right? So the idea is that although it's bad to cause pain, I have morally sufficient reason to do so, because by doing so, I can save the child from disease, which outweighs the evil of the pain from the shot, right? But what I'm saying is to say that the administration or the causing of the pain is an evil is to say that there's a contingent connection between that the greater good that can be brought about and the accompanying evil, right? So the idea is that it's not a conceptual truth, which is to say it's not a necessary truth, that causing a shot or administering a shot or preventing a child from disease requires that there be pain, right? Because you could have an anesthetic, or you could have an alternate means of administering the vaccine, or you could have different laws of nature, right? There's all kinds of different ways to there's all kinds of ways that are logically possible to have the good without the accompanying evil, right? And what I'm saying is, given that God is omnipotent, then he's not bound by any contingent connections between goods and accompanying evils, right? He can do anything that's logically possible. And so since it's logically possible to have the good without the accompanying evil, God would always be rationally and morally required, right, to choose the means where he can achieve the good without the accompanying evil. Does that make sense?
Is this lagging for a lot of people?
Not from. Yeah, I understand the response, but what if somebody said that when it comes to a lot of evil, it's like a necessary connection, or
okay. So if you say it's a necessary connection, right? So there, just to use an example, something like a redemption requires a fall, right? Like it's a conceptual truth about redemptions,
yeah,
that it requires a fall, right?
yeah, or
What
like
I'm
for
saying,
example,
yeah,
or
go
like
ahead.
for example, Jesus' crucifixion,
Right, the
self-sacrifice
happy
is the biggest act of
Felix
love.
culpa, yeah, right. So what I would say there is that if it's a necessary truth, then it can't be the case that God thinks that it's undesirable for that thing to obtain, right? Because that would be like God desiring a triangle where the angles didn't add up to 180 degrees, right? He couldn't coherently desire that, because there's no possible world where he could have the one without the other, right? Every world where he gets a triangle is one where, he gets a closed figure that has angles that sum to 180 degrees, right? So he couldn't coherently desire a triangle without 180 degree, without angles that sum to 180 degrees. Yes, exactly. That's it. That's it. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Is there an additional response? Because I know that Luis Oliveira has like an additional, if all evils have like morally sufficient reason to obtain, then we shouldn't prevent any. We could shut down all prison systems, let anybody do anything. But I now named an additional, but is there like an additional you use personally sometimes?
An additional, say the last part.
Yeah, an additional response that you personally use, like besides the one that Luis Oliveira.
Well, I guess my basic response is the idea that it's incoherent for God to think that some feature is evil and therefore undesirable if it's necessary for, logically necessary for some good, some so-called good to obtain, right?
Yeah, so it just gets reduced down to God desiring evil.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But yeah, me and Trey also like using the Luis Oliveira response. Basically, if there's like a morally sufficient reason to let uh, all instances of evil obtain in reality, then we shouldn't prevent any whatsoever. Because they're morally justified in obtaining, we can shut down all prison systems. If you see a child getting raped, just forget it.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good gambit.
Yeah. There's like a possible theistic response basically saying like maybe the purpose of some evils is just for us to prevent them and nothing more.
Well, that's fine. I could grant that, but then it would still fall afoul of the objection that I raised, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually liked the whistleblower response at the beginning, but then I encountered that maybe some evils their only purpose is to be prevented by us.
Yeah.
And,
Though that
and they
seems
just are,
very ad hoc, but yeah, it's logically possible, I guess. So
yeah,
you can't say
yeah.
that, yeah.
All the ones that we don't encounter or fail to respond to, then those we were never meant to respond to them anyway.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna restart. We're gonna get debates.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna restart. We're gonna get debates.
All right.